have Jean Fazel, who will speak about algebraic vector bundles on smooth schemes.
Yeah, so first of all, I want to thank the organizers to give me the opportunity to speak in Oslo. The weather is very nice. I hope you all enjoy it. Well, so when I was invited to this conference, I wondered what I wanted to speak about. And so as far as I know, the title of the conference is Motivic Geometry. So I guess that it would be a good place to to give a survey talk on the classification of algebraic vector bundles on smooth schemes. And here, I hope you all noticed that I omitted the word affine. So I want to try to give an idea on the developments of the last 10 years on this topic, right? So I guess that's the plan of the talk would be something like I'll start on affine schemes. And here I do apologize because I guess that many of you have heard part of this point, but I hope that you will learn something new, at least say in the second and third point. And then in the last part of the talk, I will try to explicitly construct some vector bundles on schemes, and again, usually not affine or maybe not affine. So you'll see. All right, so let me remind you very well-known facts from algebra, right? So if you give yourself a ring or a K-algebra of a field, you want to classify all projective modules of some rank, and of course you can always assume that the rank is constant, right? So when we mean classification, that means that we want to understand the set of isomorphous classes. And well, that's already good, but you also want to know what is the behavior of this stabilization map, which is just defined by adding a free summand of rank 1 to a projective module, right? So one first observation, which is kind of easy, is that stably, if you take the limit over all n, then this set actually is a group, and this group is the reduced K0. So that means the subgroup of K0 of rank 0 elements. And well, it has a group structure, but also it can be in some sense computed using all the tools of K-theory. So so of course it's hopeless, but suppose that it's done. So our task is to go from this stable knowledge to unstable knowledge, and for this we use these stabilization maps, right? So of course it's well, it's the goal of the study of projective modules from the start, and I'll just very quickly remind you these two classical results, saying that this psi n is just surjective for any n larger than d, and it is actually injective if n is larger than d plus 1, all right? So as a result, well, what we are trying to compute is just, well, so this K0 twiddle, which I defined before, is just phi d plus 1 of R, and well, that means that what we understand, it's a finite, we want to understand a finite number of pointed sets, meaning phi d minus 1, phi d minus 2, and so on and so on and so on. Of course, there is a very, very classical example, and basically, I guess we are all sick of it, but these classical examples show you that even for very nice schemes and very nice fields, then the results of Bass and Serre are the best ones, right? So this is over a general field, maybe, and but things do improve for algebraically closed fields, meaning that well, there are also quite famous theorems of Suslin, and saying that this. So first of all, he showed that this map had a trivial fiber. That means that stably free modules of rank D were actually free. And then in a subsequent work, he proved that this map was actually injective in case of, well, of an algebraically closed base field. Right, so the obvious question is, can we improve this result? And well, so we did a little bit on this direction with my collaborators, and well, we proved that the map from psi d minus 1 to psi d it's not a Xi, it's a Phi, sorry. Well, it had 3 fiber, but it doesn't say anything about the other fibers. I will come back to that in a moment. Right, so of course, in the last, say, 10 to 15 years, there was a new approach, so which was pioneered by Morel, basically, Morel-Voevodsky. So the thing is that, okay, we can study vector bundles from a motivic point of view, and what you need is a few facts, and these few facts are just listed here in some sense. So once you know these 3 facts, you see that you can actually understand this problem. Well, in case of smooth affine schemes or a field, for instance, you can understand the stabilization problem or the classification problem just using the tools of motivic homotopy theory. So I say that for the geometers in the audience, right? But all of these results were developed in the last 15 years. And they were due basically to Morel, Schlichting, Asok, Oyoa Wendt, and well, many other people. Okay, so now since we have this motivic approach, then we can use all the tools from algebraic topology, and namely the obstruction techniques, obstruction theory techniques. Just apply if you have a smooth scheme X and map to BGLN plus 1 corresponding, well, giving a class in the homotopy category and therefore a vector bundle of rank n plus 1 on X, then you can study under which condition this rank n plus 1 bundle just comes from a rank n bundle under the stabilization map. Right. So if you want to do that, there is a very well-known procedure. You have to compute some inductively defined obstructions. If you want to prove that it lifts, and if you want to prove that it lifts uniquely, then you have to study this obstruction a bit more precisely. Right, so this is the basic picture. Of course, here you can see that it requires the knowledge of the homotopy sheaves of this nice scheme, so this puncture affine space, which is a kind of sphere in the homotopy category. And well, of course, if you see this this picture, you want to actually be able to compute all those sheaves. So Morel just started the process, and he said, okay, well, if n is large enough, if n is 1, then we also know the computation, it's quite easy. But if n is at least 2, then, well, there are many trivial homotopy sheaves, and the first non-trivial one is just Milnor-Witt K-theory, which is roughly maybe the motivation to study this Milnor-Witt K-theory business, right? And well, so to make a long story short, so it's kind of course, it's a very nice adaptation of the results of algebraic topology, and you can use those results to actually get this thing, which is just the analog of the Brauer degree in topology. Okay, so that was the starting point of the talk. Namely, this allows to kind of understand this stabilization thing, but in a very, very limited number of situations. So if you want to go further, then you have to compute homotopy sheaves in higher degrees, or in higher homotopy sheaves of an minus 0. And so Aravin and me, when we were kind of young and beautiful, we made a conjecture that this pi n would be described by some kind of Grothendieck-Witt or Hermitian K-theory sheaf, and it would be an extension by Milnor K-theory sheaf. So as far as I know, this conjecture is wide open. It's like you know, when you want to update your Windows thing, it starts and then it stops at 10% and it stops forever. So I don't know if like any progress apart from the stable computation of Paul Arnay, Oliver, and Marcus, which gives an idea that maybe this conjecture is not completely out of bounds. Of course, we also have some partial results in, for some values, for small values of n, and all the maps are defined, right? We know that we have maps from there to there and from there to there. We know that the composite is actually homotopy trivial. But of course, the problem is to prove that this, this is exactly in the middle, right? Also, well, we know that this map, if you want to be able to say anything about the cohomology of this sheaf, then, well, you want this sequence to be exact. So we know that, well, we conjecture that this is exact here also. So this is kind of injective. And this is not actually surjective. So maybe for n equal to 4, it's still surjective, but unless less than 4. And but it's not surjective in general, but it becomes surjective after sufficiently many suspensions, which allow to compute the cohomology of this sheaf. Right. So if you don't have anything to do this afternoon, you can try to solve it. I would be happy if someone does. Okay, so this is roughly the picture about the knowledge we have. We don't know many things about higher. If I put n plus 1 here, then I don't know about any reasonable conjecture. And it becomes worse if I put n plus 2, n plus 3, and so on. Okay, so, and let me point out that it's a purely unstable problem, right? So if you want to, you can compute stably this sheaf, maybe. You can do it in the situation I mentioned before. But I don't know if it gives any unstable result. So it's like an open problem. Right, so maybe just to illustrate what I just said, I want to convince you that in some situations we can say, we can know everything about vector bundles. So let me start with the very easy case of threefolds. Of course, there is a much easier case, it's just curves and surfaces, but let's start with something a bit non-trivial. So, okay, I fix an algebraically closed field K, and I want to completely understand this series of isomorphist classes, pointed sets of isomorphist classes. Of course, so if I look at phi1 of x, it's just the Picard group of x. And here, it's very easy to see that this map xi1 is always injective, right? You just the exterior, take the determinant, and this gives you from any, if I want to go from peak x to rank 3 bundles, I just add two copies of OX, and then I go back using the determinant. So it's always injective, actually split injective. All right, so again, as I said before, phi3 is just the reduced K0 of x. And here, I told you before, well, of course, provided you can compute it, then you can compute all, you can understand all rank 3 bundles, okay? And well, it remains to understand the rank 2 bundles. And so this is something that we did with Arvin. So actually, the image of Xi2 is given by bundles of rank 3, which have a trivial top-chain class. Okay, so again, it is something that is quite computable if you know how to compute child groups. Well, and well, it turns out also that Xi2 is injective, right? So we know everything in here. All the maps are injective, and well, we do know that Xi1 is injective, Xi2 is just this, and of course, well, you want to. We also know when exactly something of rank 2 here is in the image of Xi1. Well, again, you have to compute some kind of Chan class, the second Chan class name. Okay, so that means that on threefolds, it was like clear, well, it's clear how to do everything. But now, of course, threefolds are kind of easy, and I want to convince you that we can also do the same for fourfolds, even though the situation will be much, much harder. And well, I first invoke a conjecture of Moti, which says that if you want to compute, if you have a d-fold over an algebraically closed field K, if you want to compute the image of Xi d, sorry, Xi d minus 1, then, well, you can do it in a very general way, saying that you just have to compute a top Chan class, right? the top chain class of P, right? So it's a conjecture, and the conjecture actually follows directly. This is something that we've done with Arvin. It follows directly from the conjecture we made about the homotopy sheaf pi n of n minus 0. And well, that's part of the game. And on the process, we were able to prove that it's also true if d is less than 4, right? So namely for fourfolds, which is the case we are trying to look at now. So what I'm going to say on fourfold is not conditional to the conjecture I stated before. Right. So again, so let me state again this, write down this this nice sequence of pointed sets. Oh, okay. So we have this K0 of x. We have this peak of x. Xi1 is injective as before. And well, so this is computed. So the image of Xi3, well, here we can use a theorem of Murty saying that, again, the obstruction for something here to come from here is just the top chain class. Then we go to Murty's conjecture and saying that the image of Phi2 in Phi3 is just given by bundles which have a trivial third chain class, right? So we know, well, using the known results, so without any conjecture, we know the image of Xi2, we know the image of Xi3. And okay, so I don't think that we know the image of Xi1. Yeah, maybe. So this is maybe last spot. But now I want to deal with the injectivity of those maps, right? So we know that Xi1 is injective. And well, we want to try to understand Xi3, for instance, right? So it seems to be easier than Xi2, but the case of Xi2 was just completely understood using the work of Tariq Syed. So you see, we can say, of course, this map is not injective in general. So this Xi2. There are very famous examples, say, of Mohan Kumar, but there is a very precise obstruction. Namely, if you take a rank 2 bundle in here, then it has a class in this group, which is a Hermitian K-theory group. And this class is trivial if and only if all bundles which are stably isomorphic to the given bundle are just actually isomorphic to it. So, okay, you might wonder if this group is computable. And I will tell you yes, because it's, as I said, it's a Hermitian K-theory group. So in fact, you can use some kind of spectral sequences to compute it and to give a very explicit expression using algebraic cycles and so on, right? So it's computable in the sense that there are some cohomology groups, there are some long exact sequences, and you might do geometry instead of just trying to guess what the structure of a pointed set is. Okay, so so this is it for this spot here. So this map is not injective, but we understand precisely there are obstructions in a very explicit group, and so yes.
You have a question in the chat from Tony and Nala. Yes. The Chern class should vanish in Chow groups with integral coefficients? Question mark, or is rational?
Yes, it's with integral coefficients. You see, even with integral coefficients, the Chow groups will be quite large. For instance, the Chow group of the top Chow group of X is uniquely divisible, so it's like a Q vector space. It doesn't really matter what you take, I think. But yeah, it's with integral coefficients. That's true. Okay, so now let's come back to the question to understand when this map is actually injective. So we know from the theorem I stated at the very beginning that this map has trivial fiber. Okay, but can we say anything about the other fibers? And here I want to state explicitly what I said before. So there is a conjecture of Sustin. There's a question mark because I don't know if Sustin actually conjectured this. He said, I don't know of any example. Well, I don't know of any examples where this is not injective or whatever. So it's not really stated as a conjecture. So a very recent result of one of my students, Peng, is that, well, if the main conjecture on the homotopy sheaf that I tested at the very beginning is true, then the Suslin conjecture is also true. Okay, so conditionally, are there any other questions? Sorry, maybe. Okay, maybe I'll answer the question at the end if you don't mind. Okay, so this Xi -1 is injective, provided that the main conjecture is true. So, well, you see, it's not completely straightforward because you have to compute, well, it's a two-step Postnikov tower argument and it's kind of delicate computation. But the outcome is that the two main conjecture about the stabilization maps of the algebraically closed fields, namely the Suslin conjecture and the Mutis conjecture, are a consequence of a more general conjecture. So in a sense, it's a simplification because we put two conjectures in one, but of course that means that the main conjecture is, is harder to prove. So, well, but to go back to the situation here, so we understand quite everything here for fourfolds. We understand precisely when Xi2 is injective or not. We understand that C3 is injective, and we kind of understand the images here and here. The last spot where we don't know is just the image of, well, when a bundle of rank 2 is in the image of, so when it splits a rank, free factor of rank 1. And here I don't know what to say about this at the moment. Anyway, so you see that the situation on fourfolds is kind of well understood now. To prevent any questions, I don't know anything about fivefolds apart from the last two steps, right? So which are given by Suslin's and Mutis conjecture. But I don't know how to deal with rank 2 bundles on fivefolds, for instance. This is something that is out of reach for the moment. And it will have to wait for computations of higher homotopy sheaves of A4 or A5 minus 0 or A2 minus 0 in that case.
Can I ask how high is higher? What's the, maybe you said that, what's the status?
Yeah, so if you want to compute for fivefolds, right? So you have to you'll have to compute what? You'll have to compute, I guess, pi 3, pi 4, pi 5, right? Of A2 minus 0. So I think that there are two missing, at least two missing groups,
okay.
Maybe three. So it's quite far. In the case of fourfolds, even here, it's the proof of Tariq doesn't rely at all on the computation of pi 3 of A2 minus 0 or pi 4. It's just a ad hoc argument using a symplectic, Grothendieck groups. And but I don't know what to do for fivefolds here. There might be an easier trick, but I don't see what to do. So maybe the trick of Syed will be of Tariq will be generalizable if I want to compute rank 3 bundles on fivefolds. It's kind of possible, but maybe work in progress. I don't know. Okay, so I guess this is roughly the picture for algebraically closed fields, and I want to come back to fields which are not algebraically closed. And if I pick a general field, then nothing is known, nothing reasonable, right? So I will focus on the last step. So I take a D fold, and I want to understand the rank D bundles, and well, the image of the image of Xi D minus 1, and I want to understand if Xi D is actually injective, so that we can say that Xi D is an isomorphism and that the rank D bundles are classified by this reduced K0. Again, it's much better because it's a group and it fits into a well-established commodity theory and it's computable in some sense. So we start with the famous theorem of Morel, saying that if you want to say that something here is in the image of CD minus 1, then you have to compute something which is not the top chain class, but almost. It is the Euler class. And this Euler class doesn't live in a Chow group, but in a so-called Chow-Witt group, which are also defined at the occasion by Morel and Jean Barge. So of course, it recovers the theorem of Moti if the base field is algebraically closed, and this is just the top Chow group. And this weird decoration, this local coefficient system, will just vanish in that case. So you can forget. If you are interested in the algebraically closed situation, then you can forget this thing here. It's also true for fields which are very small, like finite fields or fields of cumulative dimension 1. It would be exactly the same result. So, but for a general field, you have to use this generalized Chow group.
So Jean,
Yes?
there's a question from Marika Jackerson. Tariq has a conjecture with how to deal with psi3.
Oh, okay. Oh, so what is the question? I don't get it.
Does Tariq have a?
Yes.
Go ahead, Mara.
Yeah, so you said that Tariq has established the case for Xi2, and
Yes.
and you said that like the upper stuff is open, but do I remember correctly that Tariq also has an idea what happens for Xi3, or no?
No, Xi3 is it's covered by, okay, yes, Tariq has an idea for Xi3 in that situation for 4 folds. But it's covered by the result of Pengdu, of course, provided the conjecture holds for pi4 of a4 minus 0. But what I said before is that if you want to go to 5 folds and you want to understand this map for 5 folds, meaning that you have to go from phi3 to phi4 and to phi5, then one might try to do what Tariq did for rank 2 bundles in that case, but you will have to use a different group and a much more refined technique, so it's kind of wide open right now. Of course, what you are seeing is that we are trying to avoid at any cost the computation of pi n plus 1 of a n minus 0 because we don't know anything about it. So we are trying to be clever, but it's maybe maybe difficult. I don't know. All right, so we have this theorem of Morel, which tells us about the image of CD minus 1. Of course, I should say that these groups are in general much harder to compute than Chow groups, but they are still computable in some cases. Maybe now it's Thursday, so you've maybe seen quite a lot of examples, namely, for instance, in Frederick's talk. So yeah, so now I want to deal with the fibers of this map here, right? So you see, classically in commutative algebra, the fiber of this map was well studied, but the fiber over the base, the marked point here, which means that the stably free modules of rank D, right? So they are well studied, and they are very well understood techniques to say whenever a stably free module is free. But the other fibers are a bit more difficult. And again, this is a very recent of my student Pengdu. So if you want to understand, so let's go back here. Any element here is in the image of Xi D. So what I want to say is that I take rank D bundle here, I push it here, and I want to understand the fiber of its image, right? And the fiber of its image is given by the co-kernel of a very explicit homomorphism of groups from K1 of X to HD of X KD plus 1. Minor, so there is no min of it here in case we are in the odds where D is odd. All right, so of course we recover the situation of stably free modules in case we take E to be trivial. But the groups are the same, but the homomorphism delta is very different, right? So it depends on something. So it depends on the Chern classes of E. And also, if you have an element in K1, it corresponds to a matrix, and to this matrix, you might define higher Chern classes. So this map here is given, as in topology, actually, same result as in topology, is given by a sum of Chern classes of E and higher Chern classes of the matrices. So in some situation, well, it's perfectly, it's exactly what we understand by understanding the fibers of this map. It's given by two groups that you can compute. It's given by a homomorphism that you can compute because they are a function of Chern classes. If the situation is a bit more complicated if D is even, because here in case D is even, well, first of all, you'll have to carry some kind of orientations. So here it's independent of any orientation on E. But in case D is even, you have to carry out an orientation, and what you get here is not Minkowski theory, but Minkowski theory. And but regardless of this, you can state the same theorem. But of course, the problem is that we have a homomorphism here that we are not able to compute. It's not a function of Chern classes, because Chern classes take values in Minkowski theory. There are no Chern classes in Minkowski theory. So we have a homomorphism that we have absolutely no idea on how to compute. So it's much more difficult. But of course, we can go back to known situations if we suppose that the base field is of small cohomological dimension, for instance, of cohomological dimension at most 2. So it's a bit better than what was known before. Okay, so the fibers are kind of understood. But now I want to go back to the theorem of Morel, because up to now I gave you very positive results. In some sense, we understand the situation much better than a few years ago. But now I want to go to something which has been bothering me for almost all my mathematical life. So you see, there is this conjecture of Batwa-Dekker and Sridharan. So the conjecture says that, all right, so we know that the other class, which lives in this top Chow-bit group, is the precise obstruction to split bundle, right? So it's the obstruction for E, for this bundle E, to be in the image of XCD minus 1. But in fact, so this is the general situation, but in fact, the conjecture of Batwa-Dekker and Sridharan says if D is odd, then you don't have to bother about this group, which is much more difficult than the Chow group. You just have to bother about the Chow group. So coming back in some sense to the situation where we understand better things. Of course, it's better than Morel's theorem, first of all, because this is more computable than this. And of course, that there is a map from, it's surjective. So of course, well, it's better. It's kind of clear. So the known facts, so this conjecture, you see, every time I give a talk, I come back to this conjecture, and then I lose interest because I don't know how to say sensible things. And then I believe that it's not interesting. And every time I give a talk, I come back to this, and I realize that actually I do bother. So I want to know the answer to this question. Right, so of course, so as I said before, if the fields are quite small from the cohomological dimension viewpoint, of course, algebraically closed is not small, but so this is true. The conjecture, far less trivially, the conjecture is true for R, and the sketch of the proof is that in some sense we know how to compute the kernel of this map in case the X is smooth over the real numbers, right? So so supposing that the Chern class is 0 here, that means that, well, it's easy to prove that 2 times the other class is 0 here. And then we understand pretty well the kernel of this map. It has no 2 torsion, and you can just easily deduce that the other class is trivial, and that the bundle actually has a free factor of rank 1. So here it's maybe time to stress that you know, there is a general philosophy. If something is true over C and R, then it should be true. But of course, it's not the case here. It's not the same situation because the bundles are not defined over Z in general. And well, if you have a complicated field, then the bundles are defined on that field, and that means that the properties of the cohomological properties of the field have to play a role. And it's, even though we know that this is the situation when in these cases, this doesn't say anything about the general situation. Right, so other known facts is that, you see, one of the differences between the other class and the top Chern class is that the other class is usually unstable. Meaning that the other class of E and E prime plus are very different, even if they are stably isomorphic. But this is true, this is in the case where D is even, but when D is odd, then actually the other class is stable. So it's a much more amenable class, and actually you can prove that it has some other properties. But for us, immediately, what you deduce from this is that what you want to prove, the conjecture is actually to say that if the top channel class of E is 0, then you can split E not as a bundle itself, but its class in K0. Right? So this is what the conjecture is about. All right, so maybe it's an easier problem, but you go back to motivic homotopy theory and you want to prove this. So it's true, but of course, in the case where we don't mind, so when D is even, then you can prove this. So if you have a bundle of even rank over D over X, which is also of even rank, of even dimension, then if you want to know what is the obstruction for the class of E to split as a sum, the obstruction is the top channel class. But if you want to do the same in the odd dimensional case, then you go down to the other class. So no progress from that side. Okay, so so we are stuck, and I want to study the case of threefolds because, of course, this is the easiest where something might happen. Okay, so let me suppose now that we are over we have an X of threefold, which is smooth over a field, and I don't specify any property of this field. So I already defined or said what is this group is the top Charvit group, here twisted by the determinant of E because I want to consider a specific E, and then we have the Chow group here. We have the Chow group mod 2, and here we have like a kind of additional cohomology group where I to the power 3 is just the sheaf associated to the power of the fundamental ideal in the Witt group. Right. So by very construction of the Charvit group, you have a commutative square like this, which is in general non-Cartesian. The situation where it's Cartesian are just ideal, but in general it is not. Anyway, what I want to stress by this diagram is that here we have an Euler class, okay, and this Euler class goes to the top channel class here. But,
Jean, sorry, can I have a quick question, please?
Yes, sure, sure.
This diagram, it is not Cartesian, but I'm just wondering if we start with the upper left corner, then
yes.
map to the direct sum of the other entries, diagonal entries.
Yes.
And ending with right lower corner. Is this sequence exact for the billion groups?
Well, it's exact, but it's not injected. The map from here to the direct sum is not injective.
It's not injective, yeah, because this is homology.
Of course, yes.
Yeah, but okay. But
you have, sorry, you have of course you know the kernel. It's given by some cohomology group H2 of something, but in general this map is not 0. Right? So this is what I want to say. Okay. Anyway, so we have this this square here, and here we have the other class which goes to the top channel class. But we might wonder, suppose that this is 0. Okay, we have to say, okay, but maybe the image here is not 0. That's perfectly possible because it's kind of orthogonal. Suppose that, say, the other class is, the top channel class is 0. So, of course, the channel class mod 2 is 0. But this doesn't say anything about the vanishing of this class. Okay. So this class, the image of the other class, is actually what is called the top integral Stiefel-Whitney class of E. It is, well, so I define this like this, and it was also considered by Matthias Wendt and Jens when they computed somehow the Charvit groups of classifying space of BGLN or BSLN. Right, but anyway, so this other class here maps to some class which is called the integral Stiefel-Whitney class. So we want to say, okay, I have this other class here, it goes here. What are the properties of this class? Okay, what does it measure? It's a characteristic class of E. And the theorem, which is not hard to prove, is that this integral Stiefel-Whitney class just to measure the failure of the following problem. So you have E of rank 3. You look at its class in, well, you look at its first C1 and C2. So first Chern classes, first two Chern classes, C1 and C2. And the Stiefel-Whitney class of E is 0 if and only if there is a rank 2 bundle. So it's important to say that it's rank 2, which has the same first and second Chern classes as E. Okay. Of course, if I relax the assumption that, well, I relax this, the fact that if I don't ask that E prime is of rank 2, then it's such an E prime always exists. It's easy to prove. Okay, so this Stiefel-Whitney class has a nice interpretation. So namely, it measures some kind of Chow theoretic problem. Well, we can try to compute in some cases, and it's not hard to prove. For instance, that if I take, okay, I take P3 over a field, I remove any hypersurface, and then I take X to be the complement, so it's a fine. And on such things, then the top Stiefel-Whitney class is always trivial. But in general, I don't think it is, right? Okay, so now we can rephrase the first question. So the question is that I have a class here, and I suppose that it goes to 0 here. Would it be 0 here? That's the question. So we can try to look at modify and simpler question. I have this integral Stiefel-Whitney class. It goes to the top Chern class modulo 2. And we might ask, okay, suppose that the top Chern class modulo 2 is trivial. Then do we have this theorem? Again, I don't know. I think it's not, it will not be true in general, but finding an actual example is not so easy. Right. So this is just to tell you that this question is wide open. It's not, of course, I guess that the answer is no. So the conjecture is wrong, but yes.
Does the vanishing of the C3 bar,
yes,
Stiefel-Whitney class, does that not imply that the integral one also vanishes?
No, it doesn't. That's the point. Well, the integral one vanishes if C2, so the second Chern class modulo 2 is 0. But that's the point. So this integral Stiefel-Whitney class, it lifts this class, but I don't know if its vanishing is equivalent to the other. I don't know. I don't think it's true. But
I thought you can map to Witt cohomology.
Yes.
And then I see. Then you have the Euler class in Witt cohomology, but that might not be 0. It's just hyperbolic.
That's exactly true. Yeah, of course.
Okay, thanks.
That's the problem. But in okay, so we are stuck with cohomological computations, and we might try to attack this conjecture by another path. Namely, we want to construct explicit rank 3 bundles, and then we might want to try to compute the Chern classes to know what happens, right? To test this conjecture. So this leads me to the second part of my talk, namely how do we construct interesting vector bundles? So this is I will start with this easy situation of 3 folds. So I take a 3-fold over field K, and here I forgot to say that I start with some maybe the affine case. So suppose that X is affine, right? So there is so you can define the Postnikov power of BSL3. And if you don't know what it is, that's not important because you see, for 3 folds, if you want to consider oriented vector bundle of rank 3, then this is the same to computing maps from X to something, and this something sits in like a fiber sequence where the two extremes, so the base and the fiber, are just given by Eilenberg-MacLane spaces, and this one is given by a Minogue-Keteri second Minogue-Keteri sheaf, and this one is given by an exact sequence of sheaves like this. So here I cheat a little bit because if you want to know that this sequence is exact, here on the left you have to assume a conjecture of Suslin in weight 4 that we don't know at the moment. But anyway, you can forget about the 0 here. And since we compute, we have to understand the cohomology in weight 3. This doesn't matter at all, right? So we can assume that this sequence is exact. So you see, if you want to understand rank 3 bundles and efficiently construct them on X, then you have to understand some cohomology of X. So let's try to have a look. So I have X here, and I map to BSL3. When I compose, I get something which is in Chow2 of X, and this is just the second Chern class, right? So there is no obstruction to lift, which corresponds to the classical case that if I have if I pick a class in Chow2 of X, then there exists a bundle, usually of rank 3, but it can be of rank 2, which has as second Chern class this element here. Okay. So this explains somehow this, and of course there is some kernel, because as we all know, in threefolds over a general field, then you cannot use only Chow2 to classify them. So the other piece is given by this Eilenberg-MacLane space here, and this Eilenberg-MacLane space is given again by K-theory on the right and by some Minow K-theory on the left. So if you track down what happens, you see that actually in that case you can understand very easily rank 3 bundles. So if you fix, suppose that you want to fix a class here which is 0, then you can construct an element using this fiber sequence, rank 3 bundle, and this rank 3 bundle will basically be given by a class in F3 K0. That means this is the filtration of K0 given by the codimension of support. And so there will be a map from rank 3 bundle to F3 K0, and roughly its kernel, so its fiber, will be given by some kind of cohomology group. And this cohomology group will be interpreted in terms of stably free modules, right? So if you look at this weird fiber sequence, well, you get somehow famous, easy fact that if you have two elements in F3K0, if you have two rank 3 bundles with a trivial first and second Chern class, then you look at the difference in F3K0, and if the difference is 0, then they somehow differ by a stably free thing of rank 3, right? But if you go back to the previous conjecture, then you see that, of course, stably free modules of rank 3, they always split a free bundle. So from the viewpoint of the conjecture I just said before, this factor here doesn't matter. You cannot use these to construct counterexamples because they all come from stably free modules of rank 2, and they all have trivial Chern classes, right? So what these explicit constructions tell you is that it's a question about F3 K0. And in fact, there is a famous theorem of Grothendieck saying, okay, the top Chern class induces a homomorphism from F3 K0 to Chow group. And there is a surjective map from Chow group to F3 K0. And we know the composites, they are always multiplication by 2. So from this viewpoint, this question of Batwa-Dekker is always about the two torsion in F3K0. So over an algebraically closed field, we know already that the conjecture is true, but there is no two torsion. What it seems to say is that when X is real, then there is something special happening to the two torsion in F3K0, but for a general field, I don't know anything. So just to tell you, if you want to use a construction trick to understand the conjecture, then you go down to problems in K-theory, F3K0, and as far as I know, there is no general statement about this. Okay, so anyway, that was the illustration on how to construct bundles. So now I have 10 more minutes, and I want to go to leave the affine world. And I want to go to schemes which are smooth quasi-projective and maybe not affine. And again, let me denote by phi m of P of. So if I pick X to be a smooth quasi-projective scheme, then I denote by phi m the set of isomorphous classes of rank m bundles on X. And the first observation is that, well, so there is an obvious map from this to the set of maps in the homotopy category from Pn to BGLM, or in general from phi m of x to x BGLM of x BGLM. So if x is affine, this map is bijection, and this is the basis of all the study I explained before. But if x is smooth quasi-projective, then of course this map will not be injective in general. Just to illustrate, Pn from the motivic homotopy viewpoint, Pn is the same as an affine scheme. Okay, so you take a Jouanneau device of Pn, and this is exactly the same. But now if I have two bundles on Pn, suppose that I have two extensions which are different. So I have a non-trivial extension of vector bundles. If I pull back to something affine, this non-trivial extension will become trivial. So it's kind of clear that you will lose lots of information by passing from there to there. But so it's known that it's not bijective in general, but it's not reasonable to say that the map will be injective. But there is a question which is open also. So is this map surjective? This, as far as I know, there is no counterexample. And well, I want to say that whatever I said before in the construction on threefolds, well, we can do it here. So we can construct easily elements in here. But if we want to actually construct vector bundles, we have to know that whatever we construct here can be lifted. And this boils down to this question. I don't know how to prove this question, but I spoke with Aravind a few days ago, and so he said that they know with Mike Hopkins, they know how to solve the problem for surfaces or algebraically closed fields. So, well, they have an idea at least. It's true for curves, so at least there are some positive results. Yeah, anyway, so let's try to ignore this very important problem, but let's put our heads in the sand and forget about it. And let's try to compute bundles here in that set, which will be called motivic vector bundles. Okay, so if I want to do what I did before, then I want to say compute a rank, construct a rank 2 motivic bundle on Pn. Then what do? I have to compute, if I want to use the Postnikov tower argument, I have to compute pi I of BSL2 for I less than n, because if I is larger than n, then Pn will not have any cohomology in degree I, and we will not need those sheaves, right? So in principle, if I want to construct all rank 2 motivic bundles on Pn, I have to know all these homotopy sheaves. And again, this is a kind of hopeless. But if we are a bit less ambitious, we want to construct just one, one non-trivial, because if it's trivial, it's not very ambitious at all. But so we kind of first observe that there is a map from Pn to P1 smash n, which is actually a sphere in the homotopy category, right? So if I have a map from P1 smash n to BSL2, then I can compose with this map and get a motivic vector bundle on Pn. So the good point is that this P1 smash n is a sphere in the motivic homotopy category. So, well, I have different notations from Voevodsky. So this sphere I call the sphere of weight nn, but if you have a look at, if you want to use Voevodsky's notation, it would be a sphere of weight 2nn, right? Anyway, so I want to compute, so we want to compute, not to compute, but at least give some non-trivial element in here, or by adjunction, we want to give a non-trivial element in by n minus 1n. So in Voevodsky notation, that would be by 2n minus 1n of a2 minus 0. Okay, of course, doing it for any n would be just complicated, but we want to do it. So here I'm explaining a construction that we did with Mike and Arvind. But just to illustrate that some kind of well, constructing elements, non-trivial elements in homotopy sheaves is not easy at all. Okay, so we start with a field where a -1 is a square. Well, this assumption, I don't like this assumption at all, but it simplifies the discussion. Right. So the point is that we proved with Aravind and Mike that if I look at the group scheme SLP, then it's not quite a product of spheres, but it is a product of sphere if we invert some kind of integer, and this integer is p-1 factor. Okay, I don't want to enter into the details on how to invert an integer, but let me say that this assumption that -1 is a square is just to make sure that this splitting actually appears. If you don't make this assumption, then you'll have to invert not an integer, but a quadratic form. And this is a process that is a bit more difficult to understand. Well, if P is large enough, then I don't think that we have to bother. So we have to assume that it's a sum of squares, but whatever. Okay, anyway, so a long time ago, we computed pi p-1 p+1, where P is an odd prime of SLP with Aravind, and we gave an explicit generator, right, which is actually given by some kind of unimodular element or Struthyn matrix, and well, it's z over p factorial. So here we inverted p-1 factorial, so you have to think as a generator as a p torsion element, right? So if you project from SLP to A2 minus 0, again, this is true again when you invert p-1 factorial, but you don't care because what we will try to find in the end is an order p element in that group. And if you follow the construction, then if you follow the track of a generator of this group under the projection, then what you get in the end is an element of order p into a group like this. Nice enough, but if we want to make a sensible construction, then we have these weird weights. So we have a weird sphere, which is of shape p-1, p+1. So again, in Voevodsky's notation, that would be something like 2p p+1. So in particular, it's not there is no affine model for this sphere, so it's a bit difficult. But here there is a kind of miracle which happens. It's of order p, and so what we can prove is that if additionally k has a primitive pth root tau, then if you use this tau, you can construct a very weird change of weight map, right? So if I have an element of p torsion here, then I will get, by changing weights, an element of in weight pp. So this operation, of course, I have to kill something. So here I don't want to say what it is, but it depends on p. And what is important to observe is that an element in this subgroup or subsheaf is also p torsion, right? So if I have an element of p torsion here, I map it to an element here, and I can lift it to a p torsion element into this group here. Yeah, because this one is also p torsion. Okay, so at the moment, nothing says that what we are doing is does make sense. So we are just manipulating randomly homotopy sheaves, and maybe we are just constructing the zero element. So it's quite possible. But let me tell you that this this morphism of sheaf, well, it's not completely stupid, right? Because there is a complex realization functor, and under this complex realization functor, this homotopy sheaf, or well, at least its key section, I just say is self of the complex points of C, right? And the same here. So in fact, you can prove that the complex realization of this construction is just the identity. So whatever you do on these sheaves doesn't matter on complex points. It is not quite the case on real points. And I tried yesterday when I was preparing this talk to understand what it was doing on real points, and it seems to be that it's maybe zero. But anyway, if I suppose that k as a square root of -1, then it's not really important. whatever. So, okay, so if we run this process, so before we add an element in this p minus 1, p plus 1 of a2 minus 0, it's p torsion. So I get an element alpha in this group. And we can compose alpha and one of, sorry, I'm almost out of time, but I still have 2 more slides, so I'll go quickly. So if we compose alpha with one of its suspension, then we get a class which is in, well, exactly what we wanted. So this sphere to be SL2, which allows to completely construct rank 2 bundle on P 2p minus 1. So here it's pink, right? So the theorem is that it's non-trivial because it realizes under the complex under this complex realization map to a bundle which is indecomposable, right? So it's an indecomposable rank 2 vector bundle on P motivic vector bundles on P 2p minus 1, which means that it's actually an actual algebraic vector bundle which is indecomposable on X, where X is any Johanneau device of P 2p minus 1. Now, again, back to our question, can we prove that any such motivic vector bundle comes from a real vector bundle? So this is the second half of the question, and this I don't know how to solve. Right, so let me stop here. I hope, so I wanted to make a guided tour of what we know about algebraic vector bundles. I hope it was not too slow or too fast and that you got something out of my talk. So thank you very much for your attention, and I'm looking forward to answer your questions now.
Thank you very much. Let's
right. So
I'd like to ask the first question.
Sure, sure. Wait, just yep. Tell me.
This might have gone into the part of the background that maybe some folks are super familiar with, but there's this old paper of Hartshorne that I assume you were sort of referring to here about unsolved problems on projective space. And one of them is like, is there an indecomposable rank 2 bundle, I think on P5?
Yeah, that's right. That's one of the motivation, yes.
Got it. What's the status on that? I mean, that was a paper from a while ago.
I think it's still open. I don't know any answer to that.
Well, that's fantastic.
Yeah, of course, but it's not. It's only half of the answer because it's just only a motivic one. As I said before, it's like you update your computer and it collapses at 50%, and then you have to wait 7 years to complete the other 50%. So let's hope that it will be solved. So if we have time, we plan to go back to this. Let's say that.
Wonderful.
Can you say what the range of p's primes that this is true for?
It's true for any p, actually.
Including p equals 2?
Yeah, but the construction is a bit different for p equals 2, but yes, it's true for p equal 2. And here you don't have to, the good thing here for p equal 2 is that you don't have to invert anything. So SL2 is just A2 minus 0, and that's much easier. But yes, it's true also for p equal to 2, and it's much more explicit than this weird construction.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Is there any thoughts on how you can solve this descent problem?
Well, so it's been something that we've done a few years ago, 3 years ago. So at the moment, you see, it's of course a descent problem, right? So what you want to do, you have x over pn, and okay, so you look at the two. Well, you form the usual square, so you look at x times p and x, okay? And you look at the two projection and you pull back the two bundles you get. So the two bundles are actually isomorphic. It's not hard to prove, but the problem is to try to find an isomorphism which would satisfy the co-cycle condition. And well, this is basically what we've done. Let me say also something maybe for PN, because you see, I was speaking with some kind of with some specialists, and they told me that on PN there was a paper by Kapranov, I think, on lecture notes on well, lecture notes on some lectures of I think Bellingson, and it told me that there are some kind of explicit description, like namely using extensions and tilting modules and so on. So one could say, okay, in the very specific situation of PN, we could say, okay, let's try to mimic this this paper, but instead of PN, take a Jouanneau device and look what happens, because the Jouanneau devices are, well, for PN are quite explicit. So it might be possible to get something for PN using like the known methods, but to be frank, I haven't had time to look at the paper of Kapranov, so. And maybe in a year I will tell you more, but not now.
Thanks.
I would like to ask a question. If for general smooth schemes, can you say anything about the splitting of the vector bundles?
Well,
I mean,
yeah,
why when vector bundle split as a has a trivial direct domain?
No,
For
for a general scheme, I don't know what to. No, I don't know what to do. It's not clear to me. Again, you see, the problem will be the same, because if you want to run all those questions, then you'll work in this word. So you'll work with motivic vector bundles. And here the question for motivic vector bundles is the same as for vector bundles over affine things. So that will be the same obstruction problem, but I don't know what he says about the actual splitting of these vector bundles. So it's the same problem. How do we pass from this to this? One has to understand very precisely the situation to be able to say anything.
Okay, thanks.
There's a question in the chat.
Yep, let me have a look if I can. Where is the chat? Oh, yeah. Oh, no. Okay, so what is the question? Which question are you referring to?
With the maps.
Oh, yeah. Is it true that if the maps...
Isn't it true by definition?
Oh, yeah, if the map is injective, then this is true. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, sure. That's true by definition, yes. Because you see, all the maps are injective, so Q is maybe not free, but you just add a factor which makes it free, and then you go down the line of phi j's, and you get the answer. Yes. All right. Any other questions? Sorry, Kirsten, I'm stealing your job.
Thank you. Yeah.
Well, I have a question.
Yes.
So there are many results in the situation where the affine varieties are smooth.
Yes.
But is anything known when they are singular? So for example, if you're working over an algebraically closed field and you have a d-dimensional variety.
Yeah, yes. So yes. So if you want to, let me again do that. So if you want to have the analog of Morel theorem, namely this one, right? So you take X, which is a singular d-fold over an algebraically closed field. Then you replace this Chow group by Chow group. You forget about this, and the result is still true. It's roughly a consequence of Murty's theorem, because Murty's theorem is always stated for smooth varieties, but actually the result is relies on the absence of torsion in some kind of F, so kind of filtration of well, top filtration in the K0 group. And it was proven recently that by Krishna that this group, in case X is singular over an algebraically closed field, with maybe some other conditions. I don't remember if there are some conditions on the singularities, but then this FD K0 was torsion free. So this result is actually also true for singular schemes if you take Chow groups. But and also you see these cancellation results of Bass and Serre, they are true for you don't even need a field. They are true for any ring, so in particular for similar things. But if you want to say more, like on all those maps, XID -1 and so on, then I don't know anything about singular varieties. At the exception of the result of Tariq Syed, then I think we can also use them on singular things because it's defined roughly using commutative algebra. And yeah, there are some things, but of course, it's much more difficult than in the smooth case.
Okay, thanks you.
So there's a comment from Federico in the chat. It holds for any reduced affine algebra A over an algebraically closed field, the fact that FD K0 is torsion free.
Okay, thank you. So you need reduced, but apart from this, well, reduced is not even necessary because I think, okay, for FDK0, but maybe you can ignore this assumption when you actually deal with bundles. So, okay, anyway, it's really.
Are there any further questions? If not, let's all thank John again.
Thank you very much.